Having chimpanzee as an official guest speaker is the first time for the history of the city of Wisconsin.
Chimps during rehearsals. And the arrival.
We want to make sure that it's safe for Michael. Okay.
Do you still remember Bubbles? That little chimpanzee who moonwalked alongside Michael Jackson, wore tiny Versace outfits, partied with Bon Jovi, and slept in five-star hotel suites like he owned the place? Most people think he died of a broken heart right after MJ's tragic passing in 2009, or that he somehow inherited a fortune and vanished into luxury. They're dead wrong. Here we are in 2026, and Bubbles is still alive, 43 years old, an elderly man in chimpanzee years, living out his days in a quiet Florida sanctuary. But the inheritance everyone whispers about? Forget the viral rumors of $2 million cash windfall. The brutal reality is far sadder. Jackson's estate sends just $25,000 to $30,000 a year. Barely enough for organic bananas, joint medication, and a heated enclosure. From the cold, cruel biomedical lab where he was born and tortured as a baby, to blinding global fame at Michael's side, to now quietly turning his back on cameras and flinging sand at anyone who gets too close. Was he ever truly loved? Or was he just another forgotten prop in the chaotic, glittering world of the king of pop? The dark, heartbreaking truth behind Michael Jackson's so-called best friend is about to unfold. Betrayal, abandonment, trauma that never healed, and a lifetime of silent pain you won't see coming. Stay with me, because this story gets much darker than you ever imagined. Now, let's go back to the very beginning, the moment Bubbles entered this world not as a celebrity pet, but as a nameless infant in a sterile hellhole that no one was ever meant to escape. It was 1983 in Austin, Texas, inside a nondescript biomedical research facility. Cold fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the air thick with the metallic tang of disinfectant and fear. Rows upon rows of steel cages lined the walls, each one barely big enough for an adult chimp to turn around. Inside one of those cages, in April of that year, a tiny chimpanzee was born. His mother restrained, his first cries echoing off the concrete. No gentle hands welcomed him. Instead, technicians in white coats and masks immediately separated him, tagging him like inventory. This was no zoo or sanctuary. This was a breeding colony for primate research, where baby chimps like him were produced specifically for medical experiments, vaccines, drug trials, behavioral studies that often involved restraint, injections, and isolation. From day one, life was torment. The lab's routine was merciless. Daily blood draws with long needles piercing fragile veins, sedatives jabbed into thighs to keep subjects docile during procedures, electric prods used to force compliance when fear turned to resistance. Whispers from former lab workers and animal rights investigations paint a grim picture. Chimps enduring repeated shocks from cattle prods or electrified floors to condition obedience, screams piercing the night as infants were torn from mothers for isolation studies. Bubbles, still unnamed and barely months old, likely felt the first sting of those needles early. His small body would have trembled with each prick, his wide eyes darting in panic as cold metal tables held him down. The trauma was immediate and profound. Chimpanzees separated young develop lifelong phobias of syringes, hypervigilance, and night terrors, hooting and shrieking in the dark long after the lights went out. He learned early that humans meant pain, that closeness brought restraint, that freedom was a myth. By late 1983 or early 1984, when he was just 6 to 8 months old, fate shifted. Hollywood animal trainer Bob Dunn, one of the industry's go-to suppliers for films, ads, and celebrity whims, entered the picture. Dunn had connections to labs like this. He often rescued young primates for training, pulling them from research before they grew too large or damaged for entertainment work. Reports conflict on the exact path. Some say Jackson bought Bubbles directly from the facility. Others that Dunn acquired him first to spare him further experiments, then sold him to MJ. Either way, the price hovered around $65,000, a fortune for a baby chimp in 1985, but pocket change for the rising superstar. Michael Jackson, at the peak of thriller mania, saw the tiny chimp and was instantly enchanted. In his mind, perhaps, it was a rescue, a glamorous salvation from the lab's shadows. He imagined Bubbles as a companion, a living symbol of innocence in his increasingly isolated world. But here's the gut-wrenching twist. Was it true love, or just another acquisition for the spectacle? Jackson treated Bubbles like a child at first, dressing him in miniature outfits, letting him ride on shoulders through Neverland. But the chimp's early scars ran deep. Even in luxury, Bubbles would flinch at sudden movements, avoid eye contact with strangers, and show subtle signs of distress, rocking in corners, self-clasping, the quiet hooting that echoed his lab nights. Imagine the scene in 1985, a private jet lifting off from Texas, Bubbles huddled in a carrier, still smelling faintly of antiseptic. He peers through the bars at the clouds rushing by, his first taste of sky after months of concrete ceilings. Jackson, smiling wide, reaches in to stroke his head. For a moment, the little chimp leans in, craving warmth he never knew, but deep down, the trauma lingers like a shadow. Joint pain from repeated restraints in the lab, a congenital loneliness that no Versace vest or private cinema popcorn can erase. He would gesture sadly sometimes, arms outstretched toward nothing, as if remembering a mother he barely knew, a cage he escaped but never truly left. This golden cage awaited fame, flashbulbs, moonwalking lessons. Yet it was still a prison, beautiful, glittering, but one where Bubbles remained forever the outsider, forever marked by those first cruel months. The screams from Austin never fully stopped echoing in his mind, and, as we'll see next, even Michael's spotlight couldn't silence them forever. The years from 1986 to 2003 were supposed to be Bubbles' golden era, the part of the story where the rescued lab baby becomes a beloved companion, a living symbol of Michael Jackson's whimsical heart. But even in the brightest spotlight, the cracks were already forming, widening slowly until the whole illusion shattered. It began quietly in the spring of 1986 at Neverland Ranch. Bubbles, barely 3 years old, discovered grass for the first time. He bounded across the lawn with clumsy, joyful leaps, his small hands slapping the earth, as if testing whether it was real. Michael watched from the porch, arms folded, a soft smile breaking across his face. "Look at him go," he said to a nearby nanny. That afternoon, MJ knelt down with a banana, peeled it slowly, and offered half. Bubbles hesitated, old lab instincts making him freeze, then snatched it, chewing with wide-eyed wonder. From then on, the two were inseparable. Jackson carried him on his shoulders through the ranch's winding paths, pointing out the Ferris wheel, the zoo animals, the movie theater where they'd watch Disney films late into the night. Bubbles slept in a custom crib in MJ's bedroom suite, king-size mattress piled with soft blankets, curled against Michael's side while the superstar hummed lullabies to ease the chimp's occasional night terrors. By summer 1987, fame called louder. The Bad World Tour kicked off, and Bubbles joined Michael for the Japanese leg. On September 12, 1987, at Korakuen Stadium in Tokyo, Bubbles made his stage debut during rehearsals. Dressed in a miniature silk kimono, deep crimson with gold embroidery, he waddled out under the stadium lights, mimicking Michael's moonwalk with short, shuffling steps. The crew burst into laughter. Photographers captured the moment, and the images went viral before viral was even a word. Back at the Imperial Hotel that night, Bubbles curled up on the massive bed in the presidential suite, sipping apple juice from a crystal glass while Michael rehearsed moves in front of a full-length mirror. "You're my little star," MJ whispered, stroking the chimp's head. Bubbles leaned in, eyes half closed, soaking up the affection he had never known in the lab. The glamour only grew. In March 1988, Bubbles attended Elizabeth Taylor's legendary birthday party at her Beverly Hills estate. He arrived in a bespoke Versace tuxedo, black velvet lapels, tiny bow tie, tailored at a cost that could have fed a family for months. Seated at the adults' table, he nibbled caviar on crackers and playfully high-fived John Bon Jovi, who laughed and called him the coolest chimp in Hollywood. Cameras flashed non-stop. Bubbles blinked against the glare, but stayed composed, trained to perform. Behind the smiles, though, the pressure was mounting. The constant travel, the crowds, the lights, they stirred old fears. He began rocking in corners during after-parties, arms wrapped tight around himself, a silent signal of distress no one fully understood. Then came 1989 and the Leave Me Alone music video shoot in Culver City. February's studio was sweltering under massive lights. Bubbles wore a scaled-down version of Michael's military jacket, epaulets gleaming, buttons shining, and danced alongside him, twirling and stepping in time. The crew cheered every take, but off-camera, the toll showed. Long hours left him exhausted. He refused food, hooted irritably when handlers approached with leashes. Michael would scoop him up, rocking him gently, singing softly until the chimp calmed. Those moments felt genuine. Jackson confiding his fears, Bubbles grooming MJ's hair in quiet affection. Yet the B-kitch was already brewing. Bubbles was growing fast, his play turning rougher, his strength more unpredictable. The 1990s brought both peak adoration and the first real fractures. Bubbles started painting in 1991. Jackson set up an easel in Neverland's art room with non-toxic paints. The chimp dipped his fingers and palms, smearing bold swirls of red, blue, yellow. One piece sold at a 1992 charity auction for $5,000. Another fetched even more the following year. Michael beamed with pride, calling him "my little artist." But as Prince was born on February 13, 1997, whispers began. Staff claimed Bubbles grew jealous, nipping at nannies who carried the baby, flinging toys toward the nursery, even smearing feces on the door in fits of frustration. Whether true or exaggerated by gossip, the behavior signaled something deeper, a primal fear of being replaced, echoing the day he was torn from his mother in the lab. The darkest rumors swirled in 1993 during Jackson's first child molestation investigation. On August 18th, police raided Neverland. Amid the chaos, officers searching rooms, lawyers arguing in hushed tones, Bubbles allegedly witnessed a heated confrontation. In one unverified account that has circulated in dark corners of fan forums for years, the chimp lunged at a lawyer during a private meeting in MJ's office, sinking teeth into the man's sleeve as if to protect his father. Jackson pulled him away, laughing nervously. He's just loyal, but the incident marked a shift. Michael began keeping Bubbles at a distance more often, citing safety concerns as the chimp matured. Promises of forever started to feel hollow. By the early 2000s, Bubbles was no longer the playful baby. At 17 to 18 years old, he weighed 185 pounds, his adolescent hormones fueling natural aggression. Playful swats became bruises, sudden movements triggered growls. On a rainy November afternoon in 2003, during a routine veterinary exam, Bubbles, stressed and territorial, nipped Michael's hand. Blood welled in a thin line across MJ's palm. Jackson stared at the wound for a long moment, then looked at Bubbles with something close to sorrow. "My boy, what's happening to us?" he whispered. That small bite left a faint scar, a permanent mark Jackson would later call the wound of the heart in private conversations. Fearing for Prince, Paris, and later Blanket's safety, Jackson made the call. On December 15, 2003, Bubbles was loaded into a transport van and driven away from Neverland for good. As the vehicle pulled out, Bubbles pressed his face to the grill, hooting in sharp, desperate bursts, arms reaching through the bars toward the ranch that had once been everything. Michael watched from an upstairs window until the taillights vanished. He never visited. The promises dissolved into silence. What began as moonwalking magic ended in exile. Bubbles went from sleeping beside the biggest star on Earth to pacing alone in a holding pen, waiting for a reunion that would never happen. The golden years had been real in flashes, but they were built on fragile ground, and when Bubbles grew too big, too real, too much like the wild animal he truly was, the fairy tale ended. The betrayal was complete, and yet the deepest cut was still to come. The golden cage cracked wide open in late 2003. And what followed was not a gentle fade-out. It was a slow, agonizing betrayal that stripped away every illusion of love Bubbles had ever clung to. December 15th, 2003. Neverland Ranch lay under a rare Southern California drizzle, the kind that turns fairy tale grounds into muddy disappointment. Bubbles, now 20 years old and pushing 185 pounds of muscle and pent-up instinct, had just nipped Michael's hand during a routine checkup with the vet. It wasn't deep, just a thin red line across MJ's palm, but the look in Jackson's eyes shifted from affection to something colder: calculation. "He's too strong now," MJ murmured to the handler standing nearby, voice barely above a whisper. "I can't risk it with the kids." No dramatic farewell, no last hug, just a quiet nod, and the handler loaded Bubbles into a reinforced transport van. As the engine started, Bubbles pressed his face against the metal grill, hooting desperately, sharp, rising cries that carried across the wet lawns like a child screaming for its mother. Jackson stood at the window of the main house, watching the taillights disappear down the long driveway. He never turned away until the van was gone. That was the last time Bubbles ever saw the man he once called home. First stop, Bob Dunn's ranch in Sylmar, California, a holding pen far less glamorous than Neverland. No amusement rides, no movie theater popcorn. Just acres of chain-link fencing and basic shelters. Bubbles paced the enclosure day after day, refusing food for stretches, rocking back and forth in the corners like he had as a lab baby. Handlers noted the same old signs: hypervigilance, sudden flinches at loud noises, night hooting that woke the entire compound. Jackson promised to visit. Soon, he told aides, but soon never came. The phone calls from Neverland dwindled. The letters stopped. By 2005, with Jackson's legal battles escalating and Neverland under constant scrutiny, the decision was made to move Bubbles farther away, permanently. On March 28, 2005, a transport truck rolled into the Center for Great Apes in Wauchula, Florida, a 100-acre sanctuary tucked among pine forests and orange groves. Bubbles stepped out into humid air thick with the scent of earth and other chimpanzees. For the first time since the lab, he wasn't alone with humans. There were others: Oopsie, Boma, Kodua, chimps who had their own scars, their own stories. Sanctuary staff hoped the group dynamic would heal him. At first it seemed to. Bubbles integrated slowly, grooming the younger ones, claiming a favorite swing in the outdoor enclosure, but the damage was deeper than anyone realized. Every time a staff member wore cologne that faintly resembled Michael's signature scent, Bubbles would freeze, then turn away, refusing eye contact for hours. And then came June 25, 2009. That night in Wauchula, the sanctuary was quiet, most chimps already asleep by 6 p.m. Bubbles, however, was restless. Staff later swore they heard him hooting long before the news broke, deep, guttural calls that rose and fell like a siren. When the radio in the office announced Michael Jackson's death at 2:26 p.m. Pacific Time, one caregiver rushed to the enclosures. Bubbles was standing at the front of his habitat, staring toward the horizon, arms wrapped tightly around himself. He didn't move for hours. The next morning, he refused breakfast. For 2 full weeks, he barely ate, enough to survive, but nothing more. Rumors exploded online. Bubbles tried to commit suicide after MJ died. Animal rights forums lit up with stories of him starving himself in grief. Sanctuary staff denied it publicly, calling it coincidence, but privately they admitted the timing was eerie. Bubbles had always been sensitive to change. Losing the one constant he'd known since infancy felt like the final severing. The inheritance myths began almost immediately. Tabloids in late 2009 screamed headlines, "Bubbles inherits $2 million from Michael Jackson." Viral posts claimed the chimp was set for life, living in luxury funded by MJ's estate. The truth, when it leaked, was far crueler. Jackson's 2002 will made no direct mention of Bubbles. There was no trust fund, no lump sum. Instead, a quiet side agreement between the estate and the sanctuary provided ongoing care, $17,000 a year in 2009, gradually rising to $25,000 to $30,000 annually by 2024 to 2026. That money covers food, veterinary care for his arthritic joints, heart medication, and enclosure maintenance. It's barely a fraction, roughly 1/16 of a thousandth, of Jackson's estimated $500 million estate at death. Pocket change for a superstar's legacy. Enough to keep Bubbles from being euthanized if funds dried up, but symbolic of how disposable he ultimately was. Whispers of a secret fund persist. Dark, unprovable tales that Jackson left a hidden $5 to $10 million trust encoded in the abstract paintings Bubbles used to create at Neverland. Supposedly, the canvases held Morse code-like patterns in the brushstrokes, a private message only Bubbles and MJ understood. Estate lawyers allegedly suppressed it to protect the children's inheritance. In the most haunting version of the rumor, Bubbles still demands his share, hooting wildly whenever staff mention Michael's name, as if he knows the fortune was stolen from him. The B-Kitch cuts deepest here. The $2 million myth gave the world a comforting lie, that Bubbles was cherished enough to be rewarded. The reality is colder. He gets just enough to survive, not thrive. When fans send gifts, blankets, stuffed toys, fruit baskets, Bubbles sniffs them, then turns away if they carry even a trace of the cologne Michael once wore. He rejects anything that smells like the past. And in the back of every caregiver's mind lingers the unspoken fear. If the estate ever faces another legal battle, if funds are contested or cut, Bubbles could be the first expense slashed. Back to a lab, back to needles, back to the place he was rescued from. This was the betrayal at its peak. Not dramatic, not cinematic, but slow and merciless. Michael promised forever. Forever lasted until Bubbles grew too big, too real, too dangerous to keep. And when the king of pop left this world, he left behind a chimpanzee still waiting for a visit that would never come, still living on scraps of a promise that was never written down. But the story doesn't end in silence. What happened next, in the quiet years of 2009 to now, is perhaps the most heartbreaking chapter of all. June 25, 2009. The world stopped spinning for a moment as news flashed across screens. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, dead at 50. Paramedics had rushed to his rented Holmby Hills mansion in Los Angeles, where they found him unresponsive in his bedroom, overdose on propofol, the autopsy would later reveal. Fans gathered outside UCLA Medical Center, weeping, singing Thriller in broken voices. Neverland Ranch, long abandoned, stood silent under the California sun. But 1,700 miles away, in the humid thickets of Wauchula, Florida, something eerie unfolded at the Center for Great Apes. Bubbles, then 26 years old, began hooting. a low, guttural wail that built into piercing shrieks echoing through the pine trees. Staff members froze in their tracks. It started around dusk, hours before the official announcement hit the wires. Caregivers rushed to his enclosure, shining flashlights into the shadows. There he was, Bubbles pacing the perimeter fence, fists pounding the ground, eyes wild in the dim light. He didn't stop for nearly 2 hours, his cries cutting through the night like a siren from some forgotten nightmare. The sanctuary's director, Patty Reagan, would later dismiss it as coincidence in interviews, a chimp's random agitation from a storm rolling in. But those on duty that night knew better. Bubbles had always been attuned to the world in ways that defied explanation. And now, with Michael gone, the final thread connecting him to his old life snapped. The next morning, Bubbles refused his breakfast, a pile of fresh mangoes and grapes, his favorites. He sat in the corner of his habitat, rocking slowly, arms wrapped around his knees. For 2 full weeks, he barely touched food, sipping water only when coaxed. His weight dropped visibly, fur dulling under the Florida sun. Whispers spread among the staff. He's grieving. Online, the rumors exploded faster than wildfire. Reddit threads titled, "Did Bubbles Try to Commit Suicide After MJ's Death?" racked up thousands of upvotes. Forums buzzed with anonymous insider stories. Bubbles starving himself in despair, his hoots a mournful requiem for the man who once called him family. Some claimed the estate had arranged a private funeral for him, Bubbles attending via a framed photo of Michael placed in his enclosure where he allegedly touched it gently before turning away. Tabloids ran with it, MJ's Chimp in suicide scare. Animal rights groups decried the sanctuary for hiding him, accusing the Jackson estate of silencing Bubbles to avoid linking Michael's eccentric pet keeping to the lingering scandals of child abuse allegations. They're covering up the exploitation, one activist blogged. Bubbles knows too much about Neverland's dark side, but the truth was more mundane and infinitely sadder. Bubbles survived those weeks, coaxed back to eating by patient caregivers who played soft flute music, his favorite melody from Neverland days. The sanctuary, a 100-acre haven of enclosures mimicking wild habitats, became his permanent world. Founded in 1993 by Reagan to rescue primates from entertainment and research, it housed over 50 great apes by 2009, chimps and orangutans retired from circuses, labs, and private owners. Bubbles joined a small group, Oopsie, a feisty female rescued from a roadside zoo, Boma, a burly male with his own scars from trainer abuse, Kodua, the gentle elder, Striker, the playful youngster, Ripley, the climber, and Jenny, the newcomer who bonded with him over shared grooming sessions. They lived in a spacious habitat with climbing towers, hammocks, and enrichment toys. Puzzles filled with nuts, streams for splashing. Mornings started early, staff scattering fruits and veggies for foraging, mimicking the wild. Bubbles, ever the leader, would claim the highest perch, surveying his troop with quiet authority. Yet even in this paradise, the bee kitch lingered like a fog. By 2026, Bubbles is 43, an old man in chimpanzee terms, where life expectancy hovers between 40 and 50 in captivity. His joints ache from those early lab restraints, the arthritis flaring on rainy days. Veterinary bills alone eat up much of the $25,000 to $30,000 the Jackson estate wires annually, a sum that covers his food, organic bananas, apples, leafy greens, medications, heart pills, anti-inflammatories, and habitat upkeep. It's a far cry from the viral 2009 rumors of a $2 million inheritance, a fairy tale windfall that would have made him the richest chimp alive. That myth crumbled under scrutiny. Michael's 2002 will mention no animals, only a quiet estate agreement to fund care for life. Adjusted for inflation, it's barely enough, about $2,500 a month, to keep him comfortable, not luxurious. Without it, sanctuary insiders admit, euthanasia might have been the merciful option, as rehoming an aging, traumatized chimp is near impossible. Bubbles' days follow a rigid routine, a stark contrast to the jet-setting chaos of his youth. He wakes at dawn, foraging with his group under the Florida sun. By mid-morning, he paints. Staff provide canvases and washable paints, and he dips his palms, creating swirling abstracts in blues and reds that sell for charity, fetching $1,000 to $5,000 each. Afternoons bring flute music piped through speakers. Bubbles sways gently, eyes half closed, as if remembering Michael's voice. But evenings come early. He retreats to his nest of blankets by 6 p.m., curling into a ball as the sun sets. No more five-star suites, no caviar parties, just quiet, repetitive days in a fenced world. The esoc hits hardest in the small moments. Bubbles despises cameras now. Tourists or filmmakers approach, and he turns his back, flinging handfuls of sand with pinpoint accuracy, a silent, "Go away." Staff say it's trauma from paparazzi days, but it feels like rejection of the fame that stole his wild essence. When fans send gifts, teddy bears, photos of Michael, he sniffs them warily. If they carry even a hint of cologne reminiscent of MJ's scent, he pushes them aside, hooting low in distress. And then there are the nights, sudden shrieks piercing the darkness, Bubbles pacing his enclosure, fists thumping the ground. Caregivers rush in with flashlights, finding him staring at nothing, as if haunted. The darkest tales swirl in conspiracy corners. On the night of Michael's death, some claim Bubbles didn't just hoot, he painted. Staff discovered a fresh canvas the next morning, chaotic strokes resembling a fallen figure, dark reds bleeding into black. "It's MJ dying," one anonymous post on a fan site insisted. Their souls were linked. The rumor grew. Bubbles as Michael's reincarnation, trapped in chimp form to hide Neverland's secrets, the alleged abuses, the hidden rooms, the eccentric rituals. He's being kept silent, conspiracy threads on Reddit argue, not away so he can't tell what he saw. In the most chilling version, Bubbles punishes Michael's memory. When staff play Thriller to soothe him, he lunges, nipping at speakers or caregivers. Once, they say, he grabbed a framed photo of MJ from a visitor and hurled it against the fence, shattering the glass, stones and debris flying like revenge for the abandoned inheritance. Reality bites harder. Bubbles' health declines. Lab-induced joint pain requires $30,000 yearly in treatments alone. X-rays, supplements, custom orthotics for his enclosures. His heart murmurs faintly, a side effect of stress and age. The estate's checks keep coming, but whispers persist. If the Jacksons face another lawsuit, if funds dry up amid ongoing family disputes, what then? Sanctuaries aren't free. Without that $25,000 to $30,000 lifeline, Bubbles could be deemed unfundable. Euthanasia looms as a grim mercy, or worse, relocation to a research facility, back to needles and cages. Imagine it, the chimp who moonwalked with a king, reduced to a test subject again, his final days echoing the horrors he escaped. This is the enduring B-Kitsch. From rock star revelry to elderly isolation, Bubbles embodies forgotten fame. He leads his troop with quiet wisdom, grooming Oopsie during storms, sharing food with Stryker. But alone in the dark, he hoots for a ghost. Michael's death didn't kill him. It left him suspended in limbo, a living relic of a shattered dream. The world moved on, but Bubbles remains, old, aching, forever waiting for a visit that ended before it began. And in that wait lies the deepest shock of all. And so the story of Bubbles fades, not with fanfare, but with quiet sorrow. In 2026, at 43, an old chimpanzee, Bubbles lives in the Center for Great Apes, Florida. His steps are slow, joints aching from lab scars and age. He still paints swirling abstracts, listens to flute melodies, and curls up by 6 p.m. He leads his small troop, grooming Oopsie, sharing fruit with Stryker. But the loneliness lingers. The moonwalks, Versace tuxedos, caviar nights, all echoes now. The man who promised forever never returned. His inheritance? Just $25,000 to $30,000 a year from the estate, enough to survive, not to heal. Did Michael ever regret watching that van drive away in 2003? Does Bubbles still wait, hoots piercing the night? Or has time dulled the ache into silence? We say he's safe, but safety isn't love, and Bubbles loved completely in a world that only used him. What would you ask him tonight? Does he forgive? Does he remember? Comment below your thoughts, your questions. If this broke your heart, subscribe and turn on notifications. More hidden stories await. Bubbles may never know we still think of him, but tonight he's not completely alone.